A very good morning. We're glad you're still with us. Let's dive into our one for the road discussion this day, one that has been co-opted in because today, the 1st of December, is World AIDS Day, one of the days that are dedicated to push and, of course, advocate for some of the issues that help in fighting HIV AIDS and reducing the spectre of the disease, especially within the country and indeed across the world. Just give you a preview. A review that was undertaken by UNAIDS in 2020 shows that inequalities are a key reason why the 2020 global targets in keeping HIV in check were missed. The inequalities underpin stigma, discrimination and HIV-related criminalization, enhancing people's vulnerability to acquire the virus and make those that are living with it more likely to die of AIDS-related illnesses. If the targets and commitments in the strategy are achieved, the number of people who acquire the virus will decrease from 1.7 million in 2019 to less than 370,000 by the year 2025. And the number of people dying from AIDS-related illnesses will decrease from 690,000 in 2019 to less than 250,000 in 2025. And the media is a critical link between the government and the people in giving this information and plays a major role in bringing the fight and all the plans into realization. We are joined here by reporter Walter Mwesigye, who has been reporting on matters health and of course HIV AIDS campaigns being pretty much part of that, to help us understand how the media is driving this particular campaign and its role. A very warm welcome to the program, Walter Mwesigye. I usually refer to you as our resident doctor. Why? Because on matters health, of course, you are very much informed. The fact that that is your beat. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Not bad at all. Glad to have you on the show. Today, 1st December, first and foremost, is World AIDS Day. Yeah. Many people today are going to hear a lot of messages. Yeah. There is going to be a lot of talk on HIV and AIDS. Many of them, perhaps, might not understand exactly why the day is significant. Just take us through that.
Yeah, so first of all, HIV and AIDS in Uganda, or I say world over, is still a big problem. I mean, developing countries like Uganda still require a lot of funding to deal with the problem of HIV and AIDS, and basically reducing the threat to life.
That's right.
There are targets that were set to have it eliminated as a public health threat, and that cuts across many things. Meaning as a cause of death, or as a cause of sickness, or as a disease that is recurring within the population. And excuse me, if you look at where Uganda has come from, I mean, it's been a long way from when the first case was detected somewhere in Rakai, present-day Rakai. Back then, it was part of the Greater Massacre, and yeah, still. But at the time, there was no treatment, and if there is one thing that you could credit Yoweri Kaguta Museveni for, is spearheading the fight against HIV and AIDS. Yeah. Ever since he, got to know about the HIV and AIDS infection. He took it upon himself, spearheaded an initiative in 2002, the presidential initiative against HIV and AIDS. Until to date, the only challenge is that we still have high infection rate in the country. And the problem is that the young girls are affected greatly. I'll tell you for a fact, in Uganda, each and every week, we have 1,100 new cases, new infections of HIV and AIDS.
1,000?
Yeah.
Let's just say more than 1,000.
Yes.
Each single week.
Yes. And the biggest percentage, up to 64% of these cases, is young girls.
What is the age bracket? Because young is relative.
Well, the age bracket is normally between 15 and 49. That's on the greater expense, But if you want to make it a bit tighter, it will be from 15 to around 25.
Okay.
New infections, 64%. That's why this day is so important in Uganda. And that even when we have tried to achieve the global strategy 90-90-90, now we have even increased to 95-95-95. We still have very many new infections, and we have many people living with HIV, 1.4 million people. So if you're to look at what this day signifies in the country, it's that big.
That's a huge percentage. Of course, we shall be looking a little bit later into what is driving this particular trajectory. But let me refer you back to the time when AIDS was first discovered or announced and widely given attention. At the time, the media wasn't really as vibrant as it is today, and it was, many people thought, the lack or the slow flow of information about the disease perhaps also contributed to the fact that many people found themselves in the line of the virus's fire. Now that the media is vibrant and can reach virtually anyone, there is of course significant difference in the amount of information that people get. However, do the people actually take this information seriously? Because when you say infections are on the high, the media is trying the best that we can do to disseminate some of this information. What is failing? Are we disseminating the messages in the wrong ways, or people are just adamant?
Well, there's even research that has been made to that effect, to understand the effectiveness of the media in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Of course, like I said earlier, Uganda has done quite well.
Yeah.
And, you know, many people really wanted to know what this country has done. But it was established that media messaging is very effective in, you know, relaying or telling people, or, you know, helping people lead better lives in terms of understanding what HIV is. But what was also established is that the environment in which we live in greatly impacts how we are going to live our life. I mean, we have things like condoms, protective measures, really.
One of them.
You could abstain, you could use a condom. But because of things like peer pressure around you,
you find yourself...
you'll end up, I mean, doing what your friend did yesterday night to try and find out. But of course, we also have communities that are hard to reach. Fishing communities. Those are some of the areas with a very high prevalence rate, if you look at the country status.
That's right.
Generally, the prevalence now is about 5.4. So maybe 5 out of every 100 people will have HIV and AIDS. But if you go down to the fishing communities, for example, you'll find the prevalence rate there is as high as 8%.
And that is above national average.
Yes. And we have communities that live on routes that have, I would say, busy routes. And there's something they term as a transitional sex. It's a big problem in the country. You have people in transit who are moving with, you know, their illnesses, their infections, and they come spend a night or two here, and
is that the phenomenon we often hear of particular trading centers along highways, that this particular trading center is known to be one of the pockets where prevalence rates are high.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, the media is very effective. I mean, it was even found in several studies that were conducted that simple things like SMSs were used and people actually responded. Even right now, there's an SMS platform that provides you free information. I mean, you don't have to pay for anything. You just have to dial, and then you can either listen or have it read in any language in the country. Very effective, but where we live also matters, and the people we associate with. Yeah.
Well, the media finds itself in a very tight spot of bother when it comes to dissemination of information, because largely most of the content that the media is churning out seems to glorify sex. And it's a bit of a dilemma when, for example, television stations, radio stations, through the music that is played, the newspapers that choose many times when the pictorials come out, there is glorification that is attached to sex. So it's difficult for the person out there to figure out exactly how they must avoid what is being glorified. How do the mindsets change in this particular setting?
Yeah, well, mindset change is sometimes a bit very personal.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can have a class of 100 students, teach them the same thing, but
they all grasp differently.
Yeah, almost half of them probably will not even respond the same way if there's a question posed from what they've learned. So in most cases, to blame glorifying sex, I think, is just to find an excuse. Because when you contract HIV, it's a personal thing.
Yeah.
You know,
very personal.
You will say, I watched on the TV these people doing this and that, but when you get that infection, it's personal. Yeah. So whereas we have to do a lot to, you know, change people's attitude towards responding to what they see or what they hear in the media, we have to know that in the most biggest percentage, it's very personal on how you take the decision to live the life you want.
Okay, let's just delve a little bit more on the aspect of mindsets. For the last 25 years, we have a generation that might struggle to fully understand what the scourge can do and the effects that it has to any one community. For those that are 30 years old and older, understand that some villages had entire families wiped out. And then at the time before the introduction of ARVs, people bore the brunt of this disease to the extent that they became more like ghosts when you look at them, and it kind of helped those at the time to understand that when I get to be irresponsible, this is what's going to happen. The advent of ARVs seems to have changed that. People can still look very healthy and they live with HIV AIDS, and it makes those that didn't see the other aspect unable to make the comparison and perhaps bring about the fear factor. Do you think that could be also a driver?
Yeah, quite sure. And of course, you're going to be having conversations after me with, you know, people who do a lot of work around HIV and AIDS.
Sure.
But what I've listened to over time is that the change in the kind of life these people live, you know, portrays a different picture. Yeah. And I'll tell you for a fact, when I was still in school, every time we're going for holidays, they used to put us on assembly and they show us pictures of emaciated people. Yeah. We didn't know if they had HIV or not, but, you know, you'd just see ribs, and the teachers would tell us, you see this picture, if you go out there and contract HIV and AIDS during the holidays,
this is how you end up.
This is how you're going to end up. And the fact that there was no treatment, I mean, people really got scared. Some thought it was witchcraft, so really didn't want to get in close contact with that kind of witchcraft. But the way people see people living with HIV nowadays, living a full life, which is a good thing, makes them think this is something that you can actually live with and you're good to go. But the kind of stress, I mean, the stories now have changed over time because we are now looking at lines of treatment.
Yep.
We're looking at funding for HIV prevention. We are looking at different things. We're not looking at stigma that much, because back in the day when somebody had HIV and they were really emaciated to the bone, even the neighbors would be like, alabika bubi nnyo. I mean, that kind of stigma attached to people never wanted to associate, or people got actually scared because of that stigma. They'd be like, I don't want to be like that person.
That's right.
Yeah, but now the focus has shifted to many other things, leaving out the way the real HIV actually looks like, or the way it looked like back in the day.
And how it affects the people.
So it's kind of obscure, and it has, really blinded many of us in the Generation Z.
Oh, of course, Generation Z. But talking about being blinded, when you look at the funding drives and the campaigns that are being undertaken by government, of course, bankrolled by the donors, isn't the media also being blinded to focus more on propping the stories of funding and rollout of these initiatives, instead of ensuring that the earlier messaging that ensured that the people, especially at the grassroots, the rural areas, understand the scourge and how it affects them? Don't you think we are also complicit?
No, I don't think so, because in most cases, the media tries to move with the sands of time, if I would say.
Sure.
If really there's not much to say about how HIV looks like, in its worst state, and there is new treatment that people can use that is being talked about, then you want to tell people about the new developments.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes we do not want to
be the guys, the naysayers, the prophets
imprison ourselves in one corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll find that as time moves on, the new developments will quickly take over, and they will be much more interesting, because I can give you an example. In Uganda, we have about 1.3 people living with HIV on treatment. On treatment. Yeah. And some of these are on, most of them are on line 1. About 500 or so are on line 2 and line 3. Now, those on line 1 who find it resistant are now looking for options. I mean, they are no longer looking that bad like the previous HIV used to be. So they are looking for new options. Yeah. So this is new information that you want. And now you want to tell people that if you go out there and contract resistant HIV, you will directly be eliminated from treatment of line 1. You will skip that level and go to line 2, line 3, which is quite difficult to find in the country. It is available, but not readily available like line 1, which is provided free by government. Yeah, so I don't think we can imprison ourselves in one corner to stay on one fact. All right,
since we are purveyors of information, or people that are supposed to inform the public, allow me delve a little bit more on the lines of treatment for HIV. What you've just said there was very complicated for the average Ugandan. I struggled to keep pace. Can you just take us through the available treatments, for example? What is line 1? If somebody, for example, he contracts the disease and understands after doing a check, what is available for the average Ugandan?
So
I hope it's not very technical.
And I'm not going to use those technical words because I don't want to confuse anybody.
Sure.
But yeah, I'll just use a very simple example, malaria, which is a big problem, because malaria and HIV are the two leading causes of death in the country. We have malaria as number 1, then neonatal problems in there as number 2, then HIV number 3. And that is what they're still fighting actually to end. But line 1 is ordinary treatment. I would say ordinary treatment. If you're a new infection, or if you get the infection, there's treatment that has been available over time, which is what they call line 1. And it's a combination of many drugs, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, taken in several tabs. And because science evolved, they understood that the virus also evolves and became resistant to some of the medicines in line 1. So they created a cohort of new medicines in line 2. So the difference is just in medicines. Like the way you'd say you'd take chloroquine and it doesn't treat your malaria, and then you take quinine, and then you take these new tabs for malaria.
Artemisinin based.
Exactly. So that's just the way it rolls.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
and the difference matters in pricing and availability.
All right. Time is not our best ally. Regarding the day, 1st December, World AIDS Day, I'm not very well conversant with the theme of this particular commemoration, and where exactly will government be holding the official events?
Yeah, the official event is in Mwesigye district.
Mwesigye.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in western Uganda, I should say. Either Rukunji or Sinjo. Not quite sure about the districts. They may confuse me now, but it's in western Uganda, and that's where the official function is going to be. The president, as usual, is going to be there, and
of course, chief campaigner.
Yeah, many other HIV and AIDS campaigners will be there.
All right. Thank you very much for that particular perspective related to the media, and of course how it is significant in the fight against HIV and AIDS. Walter Mwesigye, it's been a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for this particular segment of the program. We shall be returning with something that I believe should offer us a lot more information and perspective with regard to HIV/AIDS. We shall be discussing ending the stigma, and shall be joined by HIV Prevention Division Head at the Uganda AIDS Commission, Ruth Awori. We shall also be speaking to Daniel Byabakama, as well as Patricia Najita, a Communications Officer with SRHR Alliance Uganda. All those are stakeholders in the fight against HIV.